Greetings, noble ones. I am Sir Eoth, your guide through these tales. With this New Year's opening, a lot of change has been brought to us. And I am not talking about your New Year's resolutions, which you'll keep, of course. I have complete faith in you. I am instead talking about the 5.3 patch, the closing act of Natlan's main story, and once again, it did not disappoint. Mostly. Fellow Capitano wanters, I feel your pain. As per usual for this type of video, I shall cover, summarize, and explain the events that have unfolded, as many names and dialogues come through, like those of the previous Pyro Archons, they can be easy to miss, or even misinterpret. Since Fontaine's conclusion, the main story of the game has increasingly merged with its deeper lore, once confined to books, text, and obscure dialogues. The pace has undeniably quickened, bringing long-standing mysteries like the heavenly principles, the four shining shades, the primordial sea, as well as the dragon sovereigns to the forefront of the scene. Naturally, I shall also share my thoughts on the Traveler's role in this final act. If you've seen my other video, my stance on them is clear, but I will remain as impartial as possible. As always, I welcome your opinions. Drop them in the comments and I'll be there to answer all of them. I would also like to extend my thanks for 200 subscribers. It feels baffling to me. When I started this a few months ago, I was already content with just 20 people listening to me. Really, thanks a lot for enjoying the stuff I make and exchanging with me. With that said, my fellow scholars, let us march onward to the end of our story. We resume with Mavuika preparing for her final battle, the Traveler at her side, bound by the knowledge that in this realm they are going to, only the two of them can rely on each other. And at last, the Traveler receives their ancient name, Tumaini, meaning hope. This is significant to some extent. Crafting an ancient name usually claims the life of the creator, yet Xiuhcoatl survives, and on top of this, the ancient name ensures the Traveler's safety in the coming fight. So long as they win, of course, thanks to the Ode of Resurrection, as if the Traveler is ever going to die. In any case, Tumaini, the name of hope, is certainly a fitting name for the weakest descender, whose true power lies in pushing others to bring change, or at least in Natlan, but we'll get to that. After a heartfelt send-off, including some tsundere approval from the almighty Dragon Lord Xumucul, the duo depart through the sacred flame, leaving Pyro behind as she cannot join us in this— oh wait, no, never mind, she can. Even when she can't, she can. Maybe next time. I exaggerate, of course, as the tribespeople can exchange with us through their way-ups. Paimon suddenly becomes able to do that as well, without any sort of catalyst, but it does not go beyond that, as none of them reach out to us once the Night Realm is properly entered. Mavuika went ahead and faces her foes alone, before getting to see the night soul of her little sister Hina one last time, allowing her one final moment before stealing herself. Meanwhile, the Traveler, aided by fallen warriors' spirits, pushes forward. Normally, I'd complain about the Traveler never fighting alone, but Natlan shifts this dynamic. Since arriving here, they've been the tragic hero, determined but lacking the raw power to stand alone. Yet, rather than reducing them to a passive observer, a witness, Natlan acknowledges their presence, making the Traveler their symbol of hope. By receiving their help, the Traveler finally becomes a true driving force, recognized by the few and finding strength in places where there is fear and despair, fueled by their hope and courage, allowing regular warriors of Natlan to stand against the abyss. This effectively makes the Traveler what is known as a catalyst protagonist, akin to the ones such as Subaru in ReZero, which tends to be either disliked or respected for being too human, standing next to the strong despite their weakness, but they are an unarguable active force of the story, inspiring others without trying to, by their existence and actions alone, rather than strength or words. This is an unexpected improvement. Is it enough for me to reconsider my Traveler critique? We'll see. I shall wait a moment before calling this good writing anything more than a happy accident. Back to the topic at hand. The Traveler's ancient name item description also comes with the past grievances and regrets of the late Pyro Archons from thousands of years ago. Those Archons are Xumucul, who regretted lifting his weapon in the name of his lost comrades in the face of fate. Cochanina, who accepted her demise at the never-ending war and embraced the abyss. Ndenge, who dedicated his life to Natlan's cause, who realized the truth of the abyss and surrendered to it, deeming himself not a king but a clown. Last but not least, or rather first but not worst, Xbalanque, the first Pyro Archon who found blame in his cheating of time and death through the sacred flame, creating a light source for the deepest dark of the abyss to covet. Strangely, Murata is not mentioned, despite still existing in Teyvat's lore. These Archons, consumed by despair, stand in stark contrast to Tumaini's hope, a theme reinforced by the ancient name's description. As the abyss comprehends Natlan, it manipulates fear and despair, emotions that fuel the traveler. Hope only exists in the face of fear. Marching ever onwards, the traveler finally reaches the place from which the abyss spreads, and witnesses Gosoythoth in its resplendent horror and its graceful nothingness. Mavuika having beaten them to the battle and initiated the last fight in an area of the Night Realm completely warped by the abyss, having its reach progressively extend there from the heart of the abyss. Before the IRS duo got to arrest Gosoythoth for tax evasion, I assume, it morphs into the Lord of Eroded Primal Fire, the old Pyro sovereign Xiuhcoatl. Following logic from the materials dropped by its weekly version, it confirms that this was indeed the body of the original Pyro sovereign and not a mimicked one, as well as the materials dropped originating from the dawn of times. It does make sense, considering its body was left in the heart of the volcano after its lost formal duel, as Neviat mentions, against Xbalanque. As the battle against the dragon is about to commence, the traveler is acknowledged by the Lord of the Night, granting them the power of Pyro, having this fire be associated with hope. Cochanina reacts, noting that this flame, this hope, has burned many times before, only to fade. While the traveler is holding on for dear life in the face of a goddamn sovereign on their own, Mavuika, meanwhile, is reflecting in her own mind, bombarded by past Pyro Archons urging her to surrender. Yet, her resolve holds, and she reunites with the understandably exhausted traveler, who was seemingly also transported to the sacred flame within the Night Realm. For the first time, the traveler is irreplaceable in a nation's fate. As Natlan's people see the sacred flame waver, they sing the Ode of Resurrection, awakening Tumaini's power and summoning 1,000 blazing suns. The weapon, not literally. With this, the battle resumes. Curiously, Xbalanque's voice emerges, speaking as if he commands the abyss. He even declared that all will be his to devour and destroy. It makes an interesting connection to his return after the war, where he mentions that the passionate radiance of the sun will eventually burn and consume all. This could simply be a writing oversight, or most likely Gosoythoth twisting past voices. Giving its ability to manipulate and impersonate the Night Souls, I lean toward the latter. This is further implied by the other voices, which swap to an incomprehensible language when Gosoythoth takes severe damage, having them use an abyssal speech which we cannot understand. Regardless, hope and despair converge, and the traveler prevails, for in Natlan, no matter how strong, no one fights alone, allowing them to prevail over the big evil bad dragon of the evil. This is indeed its true title. Do not look it up, I have my sources. This victory once more pushes the traveler as a vessel for other beings to change their fate, as seen in Sumeru in Azuma, and with the twin having become a vessel for the Abyss, as told by the legendary Xbox glider Lower Bomb. I still do not like the Traveler as a character, so I made sure to fail every single dance step in the celebration to add a little blemish to their perfect shine. However, not long after the celebration of victory, Citlali alerts us that Mavuika is made to pay the price of death required by Ronova and Xbalanque's pact. It is then that we see for the first time the manifestation of a shade, as Ronova's dreadful gaze comes to witness and obtain her due. I am particularly curious about the similarities between this appearance and the description of the crimson moon that Perinieri, Arlecchino's ancestor, had witnessed. Ronova confirms her rule of death for Mavuika, who was fully prepared for it and did not waver. In truth, she already died more than once technically, considering her first sacrifice to the sacred flame. Mavuika is convinced of her plan because, as a Pyro Archon, giving her life to the Lord of the Night as part of the price would empower it and strengthen the Ode of Resurrection for the future of Natlan. However, here come the more intricate details. Mavuika is still immortal, her life force is powerful but finite. There will come a day when this energy will be burnt out, making her sacrifice only a temporary shield for the nation. But Mavuika believes that future Pyro Archons will keep looking for ways to keep the fire ablaze and the Abyss at bay. The Lord of the Night opposes the idea, insisting on the fact that Mavuika is not special and that she is unable to endure the sacrifice alone, which does not change her mind. Ronova accepts the sacrifice, but before it is made, the Lord of the Night mentions that someone whose life is of equal value wishes to participate in the ceremony. And I believe you know where we are now headed. I must close my heart and steel my mind. Before that person arrives, however, I am both surprised and disappointed that the Traveler didn't take this chance to have an exchange with Ronova to inquire about the unknown god, as both are part of the Four Shining Shades. If not this, at least some internal dialogue with the Traveler casting assumption towards Ronova, because nothing at all feels unnatural. Now lo and behold, as the single best character in our stories makes his final stand, wishing to take Mavuika's place as he has been waiting for this day as long as she has, offering a better, permanent solution compared to her sacrifice. Capitano, as you know, is a Khaenri'ahn, cursed with immortality by the heavenly principles, as they were deemed a nation of sinners for calling upon the Abyss. Since the souls of his former soldiers are outlanders, they have been unable to pass on after their death for 500 years now. Now you might wonder, how did they die in the first place if Khaenri'ahns are cursed with immortality? You would need to know that not all Khaenri'ahns were cursed with immortality. Some received the immortality, others received the curse of wilderness, transforming them into hilichurls, who are also immortal to an extent, judging by their skin afflicted by necrosis. And finally, others perished on the battlefield during the cataclysm before receiving a curse. With his sacrifice, Capitano would be able to open the way forward to the ley lines for souls that do not originate from Natlan, and he does so by carrying them in his modified heart, which has been transformed into a vessel that merges souls and memories into knowledge. It is so simple and self-explanatory, obviously, that I should stop my video here, but I don't want to stop yapping. This device was initially supposed to allow Capitano to absorb the knowledge of the souls he took in, most likely increasing his abilities, very akin to Xumucul's plan to become a descender. But Capitano gave up on this primary use and used his heart to carry souls rather than take on their knowledge. I wonder if he loses all his souls if he dies. Wait, he does actually. Anyways, this might sound confusing, so I will explain simply. The foundation of Teyvat is knowledge, emotion, fate, and wisdom, pillars that bind humanity. Small parenthesis. According to Nahida, The concept of fate imposed by the heavenly principles on humanity is the ultimate knowledge, not to be mixed with the forbidden knowledge, a truth that the world cannot process. Relevant note for you, Venti enjoyers. If you recall Venti's story quest, he is able to allow memories to turn into knowledge and return to the ley lines. Back then, the real Stanley died in Marejivari, a region I assume will be tied to the volcano in a future patch. But as an outlander, he couldn't pass along, so his friend took on his memory as a regular human by becoming Stanley, until Venti intervened and allowed the memory of the real Stanley to rest. And so, thanks to this heart vessel, transforming souls and memories into knowledge means they, no matter their origins, are able to enter the ley lines of Teyvat through Capitano. Not only that, through this act, his immortality will directly challenge the authority of Ronova, unable to claim the death of an immortal unless she lets go of one of her rules. With this paradox, Capitano forces Ronova to make a choice: give up on one of her rules by lifting the curse of immortality, abandon the idea of claiming a death for her pact with Xbalanque, or leave the paradox to itself, which will break the natural order of Teyvat, creating consequences beyond what even she can expect. But Ronova's rules must stand, and she allows Capitano to create this paradox, making him prevail over the most threatening entity we've come to see in Teyvat so far, more powerful still than any sovereign. One of the creators of Teyvat, defeated and outmaneuvered by a human of utmost dignity and honor. Taking place on his throne as the new Lich King, Capitano is allowed to merge with the Lord of the Night, granting it eternity and making the Ode of Resurrection enduring forever, without any need for future sacrifices, as well as allowing his soldiers to pass on to the next realm. He now remains seated here forevermore, with my nearly 2 years of saving for him, concluding this story chapter. But don't part yet, as Mavuika still holds interesting mentions for the future. Dost thou, perchance, remember the fragments seen behind the fake sky that are still visible today? These fragments, suspected to be one of the corpses of the three Moon Sisters, Arya, Kanon, and Sonnet, happen to be remnants of a relic from the secret source technology of the ancient dragons' era. The same technology as the various automatons we can come across in Natlan. It does raise more questions. How did the dragons create such a massive relic, and why is it in the shape of a moon? Why is it destroyed? How did it end up beyond the fake sky? Take heed, scholars. I will attempt to answer my own questions because I cannot hear you too well through this impressively large display monitor of yours. These fragments seem to add to the tale of the three Moon Sisters, divine beings who existed before Teyvat was even Teyvat and humans did not exist yet. As two of them were destroyed, one's corpse remained in the sky and kept illuminating Teyvat, while another's debris fell to the land, and another, still alive, is said to have never appeared again, traumatized by what happened to her sisters. Perhaps the one who wishes to not appear in Teyvat anymore is the one we can see in the spiral abyss, being the bottom and a path outside Teyvat, allowing us to see beyond the false sky, which is where it connects to the beyond, where the broken fragments of the second deceased Moon Sister that we found are. As I had mentioned, the fragments are said to be secret source technology, weapons able to lay waste to the heavens, used by the ancient dragon civilization who survived the war against the heavenly principles and the dragon sovereigns. It is not far-fetched to assume that this fragment was destroyed and put away by the heavenly principles during their conflict with Xbalanque and the Forbidden Knowledge, as two of the moons broke down in an era where humans existed. Now on to the final point. Mavuika says she is certain that the Tsaritsa will send a replacement Harbinger to recover the final Gnosis soon enough. Most likely a Harbinger who is far less honorable than Capitano. Most players seem to hype the fact that Columbina will be the one to do so. if not just to use her as clickbait, and I shall stay away from this practice. Although I would absolutely love to see Columbina show up, considering that as an angel she would be interested in the Lord of the Night. I believe it is Dottore, as he seems to be involved in our next stop in Notkraj, a city in the very south part of Snezhnaya, with the individuals there using a type of power that is even more ancient than the 7 elements. Perhaps powers related to curses tied to outer gods, connecting everything to the ancient moon's remnants. It is made clear in Sumeru that Dottore is in constant pursuit of erudition, and it would make sense that Capitano's end, which directly touch on the meaning of memory and knowledge, would be of interest to him. I have noticed players are largely unhappy with Capitano's fate, but myself, I am content with it, despite having dreaded my own theories about his sacrifice ever since 5-1. The heavy price of being right is tearing me apart, but really, his end was a victory for humanity over the heavens, the first one to ever happen in Teyvat. I'm certainly disappointed that I will not get to play him, but despite me avoiding leaks, I have faith that it is not the end of him, so I shall enter a meditative state for the next year and hold onto my savings for him. Mark my words. I shall become the Capitanist, I swear upon thee. Though, how did you feel about him taking the sacrifice upon himself, and who do you think would be the next Harbinger to come get the Pyronosis? Maybe a new rank 1? Let this be our final word. With sword in hand and wisdom in heart, Sir Eoth bids thee farewell.